For more on this, we're now being joined by Rose Darrell Fingold from Taiwan. He's a political analyst. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. I want to first start by asking you that why is China so angry about the Taiwanese president meeting the U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy? Do you think China is overreacting at the moment, or is it just threatened?
Usually China opposes anything that looks like official interaction between U.S. government officials and Taiwan government officials, and even more so when it involves President Tsai Ing-wen. Of course, from the American perspective, several things are relevant. One, members of the U.S. Congress will meet whoever they want to meet worldwide, and we know they take a very heavy interest in global affairs, and they'll travel wherever they want, and it's not within the control of the executive branch, even though China perceives that the legislative branch and the executive branch are working together. But the reality is that the executive branch, the White House and the State Department, they simply cannot dictate to members of Congress who the members of Congress should meet with or should not meet with, even more so if we're talking about the House Speaker. And another important thing to keep in mind is members of Congress, maybe not the Speaker, except for the two times previously, once in 1997 and once in 2022, but members of Congress other than the Speaker frequently meet with President of Taiwan by flying here in delegations very frequently, and more frequently in recent years. And they've also met, again, members of Congress have met with the President of Taiwan on transit stops in the U.S. before. So from one perspective, a lot of this is we've seen it before, it's not new, and that's generally what the message is from the Biden administration. But China will respond. In fact, they've already announced military exercises. As of this moment, it remains to be seen whether or not the scale will be as large as what we saw last summer when Nancy Pelosi, the then House Speaker, visited Taipei. But there'll probably be a range of actions from China, whether that's only military exercises and or some kind of economic response, such as banning Taiwan products, which is something that they've done with increasing frequency in recent years.
Right, Ross, like you mentioned, that officials from Taiwan and US keep on meeting in recent past as well. And also, just to add to that, this does seem like a deja vu all over again with that trip made by Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan a few months ago. But help us understand, what is Washington trying to do right now, considering how it has clearly said that its one China policy remains unchanged?
Again, we have to keep in mind that the legislative branch and the members of the legislative branch, they do what they want, and they're not under the control of the executive branch, and that's just the nature of the U.S. political system. And China knows that very well, even though in their official media or government spokesman statements, they'll portray it as the executive branch, the Biden administration, could tell McCarthy, don't do this or don't do that, don't go to Taiwan, don't meet with Tsai Ing-wen. But again, the reality is that the members of the legislative branch, members of Congress, they're going to meet with whoever they want. And we're seeing that here. But very interesting, unlike Nancy Pelosi, who came here to Taipei, and despite a lot of speculation that McCarthy was going to come here to Taipei this year, he hasn't, and they're meeting in the United States. But ironically, that also angers China as well. China would be angry whether or not the meeting occurred in Taipei, and they're just as angry with the meeting taking place in the United States, simply because they don't like the idea of Tsai Ing-wen having meetings in the United States with high-profile U.S. politicians.
Right, Ross. Just to add to that, Beijing earlier also warned U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy on how he should not be playing with fire over Taiwan. What kind of retaliation can be expected from China at the moment?
Military exercises, again, they've already begun. We don't know quite yet what the scope of that will be. There's trade retaliation that China can take, and China sometimes uses that not just with Taiwan, but some of its other major trading partners as well. There could be things like investigations of Taiwan companies operating in China. That could take the nature of a tax investigation or compliance with labor laws, things like that. So there is some risk for the Taiwan corporate world as well, and just general kind of heating up the rhetoric and a lot of bellicose statements that will come from the Chinese media or Chinese spokespeople, then vis-a-vis the United States, there's things that China might take in response that targets American companies, for example, or not reopening dialogue platforms that were cut off when Pelosi visited last summer. So there's possible action against Taiwan as well as against the United States.
Right, Ross. Absolutely. We'll have to wait and see what kind of retaliation comes out of Beijing after Tsai Ing-wen meets U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. But thank you so much for joining us on WION and sharing your insights with us. Thanks very much.
Thank you.